As we all know, Jane Austen is one of the most widely read romantic writers. If Walter Scott portrays the Scottish life, his contemporary Jane Austen presents the life of the English country society. Scott wrote on Austen that exquisite touch which renders ordinary commonplace things and characters interesting. Her novels are the subject of intense scholarly study and the center of a diverse fan culture which has been called Jane Austen cult. She lived a quiet and uneventful life. She avoided popularity when alive. In her novels, Austen depicted the life which she knew best. Jane Austen's novels employ domestic realism. Her characters are middle class and provincial. Their major preoccupation is with courtship and marriage. In her novels, the apparently trivial incidents of everyday lives are molded into comedy of manners. It contains elements of fairy tales. Her novels pursue a smooth, unobtrusive style and avoids anything unusual, startling, cloud, or garish. Austen parodied sentimental novel. She perfected the 18th century technique of free, indirect speech, in which the voices of the characters blend with that of the narrator. Her novels give more emphasis on dialogues than on scenic descriptions. In her fiction, as in her life, there is neither severe passion nor strong action. There is nothing to disturb the even flow of life in a country town or in a village. Jane Austen has certain limitations too. As a shy and timid girl, she never had varied experience in life. As I mentioned earlier, she describes only the world she knows. Her novels are known as regional novels, wherein she describes South England. However, they are domestic novels. Some very common occurrences in her novels are picnics, dances, amateur theatricals, elopements, matchmakings, etc. Before detailing her novels, we have just a look at her early life. She was the last of the 7 children of a clergyman. Jane Austen was born at Steventon in Hampshire, where her father, who was also her tutor, is a clergyman. On his retirement in 1801, the family moved to Bath. Bath is a city that frequently appears in her fiction, and but returned to Hampshire after her death in 1805. Her life was conspicuous for its lack of events and for the strength of her family ties, most importantly with her sister Cassandra. With her mother and sister, Jane Austen first lived in Southampton and then in Charlton, remaining there until she died. As a child and young woman, she read widely, including the novelist Henry Fielding, Lawrence Sterne, Samuel Richardson, and Fanny Burney, and the poets and Sir Walter Scott, William Cowper, and her particular favorite George Crabbe. She did not marry, although she had several suitors. In 1795, Austen met Tom Lefroy, the nephew of their neighbors at Steventon. According to her letters to Cassandra, Austen spent a great deal of time with Tom Lefroy and may have had romantic feelings for him. Unfortunately, a marriage between the two was impractical and Lefroy's family soon sent him away. After her brief romance with Lefroy, Austen began work on her second novel. So, Jane Austen's writing career starts with Juvenila. Juvenila, she's written it in her early teens and is already incisive and elegantly expressed. Love and Friendship, A History of England, a collection of letters, Leslie Castle. Lady Susan is also an early work but published posthumously. Jane Austen has 6 novels to her credit. First one is Sense and Sensibility, Pride and Prejudice, Mansfield Park, Emma, Northanger Abbey, Persuasion. And the first novel, Sense and Sensibility. It's a pure satire which ridicules the sentimentalist. And it's the novel by Jane Austen, Sense and Sensibility, which grew from a sketch entitled Elinor and Marianne, revised 1797 to 8 and 1808, and published in 1811. And the tale is about 2 sisters. Elinor, the eldest, is the embodiment of good sense, while her younger sister Marianne suffers from a potentially fatal excess of romantic sensibility. Sense and Sensibility subtly explores the psychology of romantic love and the restrictions placed upon individual desire by social probity and family duty. And the second work, Pride and Prejudice, it's a perfect comedy of manners. Originally titled First Impression because the appearances of characters created the plot of the novel. Austen's second novel narrates the story of Bennets and their 5 daughters, Jane, Elizabeth, Mary, Kitty, and Lydia. The novel starts off with Mrs. Bennet's obsessive desire to get her daughters married. So the focus of the story is on the change of emotions of Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy from repulsion to love. And the next novel, Mansfield Park. And it is obviously a study of the members of a house, Mansfield Park. Sir Mansfield Park, the novel is centered on the character Fanny Price, the poor ward and niece of Sir Thomas and Lady Bertram. Sir Thomas Bertram of Mansfield Park is a stern but kind-hearted man, has 2 sons, Tom and Edmund, and 2 daughters, Maria and Julia. His wife, Lady Bertram, is a charming, indolent woman, has 2 sisters, Mrs. Norris, a near neighbor who is spiteful and selfish, and Mrs. Price, the wife of an impecunious officer of mariners, with a large family of young children. To assist the Prices, Sir Thomas takes charge of their eldest daughter, Fanny Price. In spite of her humble situation and the cruelty of Mrs. Norris, Fanny becomes indispensable to the household. Her strength of character is shown when Sir Thomas leaves to take care of his plantations in Antigua in the West Indies. Upon his return, Fanny asks him about slave trade and her enquiry is met with silence. It is to be noted that Fanny has the role of a servant in the Bertram household and is not their equal. This incident in the novel has been regarded as an implicit criticism of the decadent British aristocracy of the period. And it is apparently a more socially aware novel than Austen's other works, focusing as it does on the slave trade and the roots of the British upper class wealth in corruption and exploitation. And her next work is Emma. Emma deals before beginning the novel, Austen herself had written, "I'm going to take a heroine whom no one but myself will much like." Emma Woodhouse, the heroine of the novel, is described as rich, clever, pretty, self-satisfied young woman, is the daughter and mistress of the house of Mr. Woodhouse, an amiable old fusspot. So the novel Emma deals with the heroines. The Emma Woodhouse attempts to find husbands for her friends. And the next work is Northanger Abbey. It's a parody of a Gothic novel. And the novel was posthumously published with her novel Persuasion. The novel satirizes popular tales of romance and terror, such as Anne Radcliffe's Mysteries of Udolpho, and contrasts the improbabilities of Gothic fiction with the normal realities of life. Northanger Abbey is a work. In that work, 17-year-old Catherine Morland is excessively fond of reading Gothic novels, especially Anne Radcliffe's Mysteries of Udolpho. She accompanies her wealthy neighbors, the Allens, to Bath, where they partake in balls and other social delights. She makes friends, the flirtatious Isabella Thorpe and her rough-mannered brother John Thorpe, who pursues her, while Catherine falls in love with Henry Tilney, brother of Eleanor. Catherine visits the Tilneys' estate, Northanger Abbey, which she expects to be exotic and frightening, like in Gothic novels. General Tilney finds out from a vengeful John Thorpe that Catherine is not wealthy and sends her away from Northanger Abbey. Henry breaks with his father and proposes to Catherine, which she delightedly accepts, and the father later acquiesces. And the next work is Persuasion. Austen's last completed novel and is a representative mature work. And as I mentioned earlier, the novel was published along with Northanger Abbey. Both novels, Northanger Abbey and Persuasion, partly set against the superficial social life in Bath, and it contains biting satire. It narrates the story of Anne Elliot, who breaks off her engagement with Frederick Wentworth because she was persuaded by her mother's great friend and her own trusted confidant, the widow Lady Russell. So, Persuasion is a moving love story of Anne Elliot and Frederick Wentworth. And the one point I forgot to say that about Mansfield Park, the characters, Fanny Price and her cousins, rehearse a play, Elizabeth Inchbald's play, Lovers' Vows, which has the theme of adultery. And the virtuous protagonist, Fanny Price, is a Cinderella brought up by her rich uncle, Sir Thomas Bertram. And Fanny's virtuous love for her cousin Edmund wins over the immortal romantic entanglements of Henry Crawford and Maria Bertram, etc. And Jane Austen's novels have many allusions to contemporary fiction. D.W. Herring, in a major essay, states that Austen's satire more astringent than delicate, a social critic in search of an obtrusive spiritual survival. In texture and atmosphere, all her novels are almost the same. But her characters are real men and women. She portrayed them with a touch of genuine realism. She established the domestic type of novel as Scott established the historical. And Jane Austen never presents the kind of passions as Emily Bronte does. Her lovers are not very passionate. There is not even a mention of the French Revolution in her novels. Her novels are simply tea-table novels. As a matter of fact, Jane Austen is a supreme realist. Her stories, characters, and incidents are drawn from real life. In her novels, she had not described anything with which she had no real acquaintance. In her novels, she records accurately the manners, charms, and tricks of speech of her characters. It is quite evident that she is not a satirist like Swift or Dickens, and she is not even a moralist. She always liked good taste, sense, and virtue. In fact, she refers sensible persons and hates folly, and her plots of the novels are very well constructed. So, Jane Austen is a chronicle of English country life and social mores of the family of the country square. Austen simplified the novel and made it accurate reflection of English life. She is often considered one of the originators of the modern interiorized novel characters. She simplified the novel and she remains an enduringly popular writer with a keen observation of gender relations in the middle class. Thank you.